So listen here carefully, these are the Marshall Motif II earbuds, and if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're already a fan of Marshall. Or maybe Marshall is new to you, and if it is, here's a quick summary for you. Marshall started in the audio business in London in the 1960s, and they were hugely successful, with artists like Jimi Hendrix being well known for using their speakers and amps. And they started making headphones in 2010. 13 years later, we now have these, the Marshall Motif II ANC True Wireless Earbuds. And the name that Marshall has chosen for these is interesting and entirely accurate. You see, the French word motif is used when describing a recurring pattern or a recurring idea, and in this case, it's both. The case design immediately identifies itself as a Marshall product with the iconic signature on the front, with the case wrapped in black vinyl covering, which is indeed a motif, a recurring pattern seen on Marshall speakers and amps for decades. However, times they are changing for the better, and the materials used on the outer shell are constructed from 70% recycled materials, and despite the new composition, the case feels premium and relatively compact, and yes, it easily passes the cowboy pocket watch pocket test. The pairing button is front and center and easy to find. On some earbud cases, they do such an excellent job of hiding it that when you actually need to use it, you can't see it. So I'm a fan of this approach. At the base is a USB-C port, which does support quick charge, with 15 minutes charge giving you up to 1 hour of audio playback. Overall, it's a solid case, and the size of the case is quite similar to the Apple AirPods, but with one distinct advantage over the AirPods is it won't slip out of your hands or your pocket so easily, thanks to that classic Marshall design motif, that textured vinyl covering. Now let's move on to the Motif bud design, and there are quite a few things that I love about the design on these buds. Number one is the textured grip on the stems and the gold cap around the directional voice pickup mic. Again, this is likely another motif. I believe the design looks to be inspired by premium Marshall audio connectors and dials used on their amps. The main body of the buds have a two-tone finish with a slight texture on the outer side and a smoother texture on the inner side, and you can see the L&R stamped into the inside, just in case you need to find out which one's which. Also on the inner side, it has a rippled texture, which presumably helps create a more secure fit and improve passive noise cancelling. And at the center of this is an ANC mic and a wear detect sensor that can detect when they're in your ears or not. And in doing so, it will help save battery on the buds. And there are some interesting power saving features that you need to know about these, and I'll come back to that in a moment. There's an exterior feed forward mic under the grille on top, and this particular mic is designed to pick up that ambient noise for active noise cancelling, and it's also used for the ambient pass-through mode. The silicone tips are different from most, with a slightly larger than usual opening for the drivers, which I believe will help the audio flow in a wider formation and hopefully creating a wider soundstage. There are 3 sizes of ear tips supplied, with the medium ones being pre-installed out of the box. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting a good seal with these. The sound quality significantly improves when you get it right. So trust me, if you do get these, don't just guess your size, test all 3 and listen for the differences. Okay, so that's the visible refinements and design motifs out of the way. Here are some upgrades that you can't see beneath the surface. The battery is bigger than the previous version of the Marshall Motif. Each earbud has an additional 1.5 hours of power, and when combined with the case, you can get up to 30 hours total now. Qi wireless charging is still supported, and now, thanks to a new Bluetooth chip with Bluetooth LE support, latency, signal stability, and range are all improved, and these sound like some sound upgrades to me. Also, Marshalls say that the active noise cancelling has leveled up, and I'll tell you what I think of the noise cancelling in a moment. But before we do, let's jump into the app. So here's the software that you'll be working with if you do decide to pick these up. The app's home screen shows you the current battery life in the case and in the buds. There's a simple selector switch for your noise control, and if you're wondering about the quality of the ANC, well, I can tell you, I took these on a plane, and of course there was a crying baby in the seat behind me, because why wouldn't there be? And I also took these on a train and in a taxi, so it is safe to say that I've thoroughly tested these. Here's my opinion. The voice frequencies can still pass through, but slightly muted. However, plane noise, air conditioning sounds, and road noises are nicely blocked out. The ANC isn't quite as aggressive as some other earbuds I've tested. It seems that Marshall has intentionally set it at a point where you might start to feel cabin pressure in your ears, but they do give you the option to dial it back if that's the case. I didn't feel any of that personally, but I have experienced that with other earbuds, so I know at which point it normally kicks in. So I think they've got it just right in terms of the strength for the ANC. Overall, it's pretty good. Now, Marshall's signature EQ is dialed in by default, and it is excellent, but it is good that Marshall gives you the option to select from some other popular presets, and there is a basic 5-band equalizer available if you want to create your own custom EQ. The controls on the earbuds are laid out here as well, with your usual taps, taps, and long holds. And whilst you can't really customize these entirely, you can simplify them, which is a nice touch. However, there is one input that you can customize. It is the push and hold. So by default, on both sides, the push and hold toggles through your noise control modes, but if you want to, you could remap one of the sides to an AI assistant if needed. Spotify Connect is bundled into the Marshall app, and I'm a fan of the Joe Rogan experience, and it's nice to have a specific input gesture to fire up a podcast without even having to look at my phone. It does take a little bit of getting used to. It's a tap followed by a tap and hold, but once you know, you know. There are some other self-explanatory options here, and here are those interesting power saving features that I mentioned earlier. I've not seen this amount of battery protection control on any other earbuds before, and that says to me that Marshall have built the Motif 2 to last. Now here's my opinion on the sound quality. As always, I test this with my usual playlist, starting with an orchestral track with male and female vocals, and it is quite a vocal heavy track. The default Marshall EQ sound signature seems to be focused more on clarity. It's nice and detailed with just enough bass so that the mids don't become muddy. The result of this is vocals sound beautiful and instruments sound crisp. I also listened to one of Idris Elba's favorite reggae tracks on this, and this is a great test for higher frequencies with percussion instruments, and there's also quite a lot of bass. The highs aren't too sharp, but I did find myself going into the EQ and boosting the bass a little bit for this specific genre. And the same goes for dance tracks. It sounds good with the default sound signature, but it's nice that there's quite a bit of headroom for extra bass in the EQ. And when you do turn this up, you don't get overwhelmed by heavy bass. Instead, you get a nice punchy bass line without destroying the rest of the music. However, doing this for rock tracks or live recorded tracks can kind of mute out the vocals a bit. I definitely prefer the signature sound for those kind of styles of music. Overall, the sound performance is very good and the loudness is more than enough. And the reason I say that is because when I was testing these with a classical track, at times I found myself dialing down the volume because the highs are truly high, and don't get it twisted, that's a good thing. So what you're hearing right now are the mics on the Motif 2 ANC from Marshall with no background noise in the room. And before I introduce some noise and some wind, I just want to say, if you guys want to see a more in-depth analysis of how good these earbuds are and where it places in the What Gear ranking system, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to make that for you. Anyway, now let's introduce some noise. Okay, so right now you're hearing some road noise in the background. So this is a good idea of how they will sound if you're wearing these on a busy road, making a phone call. Now let's introduce some wind. Okay, so now we've got the road noise and the wind. So this is a simulation of how it might sound on a windy day. Let me know how the mics are handling. And on that note, I just want to say thank you guys for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you got any value out of it at all, a little thumbs up would make my day. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. I'll see you in the next one. Don't be late.